Be good.
Awesome. So we're about to get started and we're recording. Over to you, Bacchus.
Yeah, so just as a warning to everybody, this is being recorded as a training video. If you do not consent to be recorded, or if you have any issues, please let me know or let Hukano know. We're just trying to make these recordings available for people who aren't available like now or at other times, and just to try to grow our training resources. So on that point, I want to say welcome. Thank you for attending the training. My name is Bacchus. I am a senior officer in the Void Alliance. I'm also part of the NILF Corporation, and I'm one of the officers that takes the lead in doing the fleet trainings, just like today. And the fleet training that we'll be focusing on today is fleet. Just taking advantage of all the CTAs that we've been doing lately, as we're starting to be more aggressive, as we're starting to have more and more big fights. I want us to all be on the same page regarding just basic fleet commands and just overall general knowledge of how fleets work, how to join a fleet, how to set up a fleet, either for ratting or for PvP. And even just following these basic understandings and understanding the different commands that we give will help you stay alive longer, so you can have a more fun time in the CTAs. But thank you again, everybody, for joining me, and I hope that this is helpful. And of course, at the end, I have some time built in. If you have any questions, or if you have any questions as we go through, go ahead and slip in. But I'll just try to go through the 10 points that I've outlined, and then we can get our training complete. So the first step that I'd like to cover is the fleet card. So many of you have already seen the fleet cards in chat, or you've seen the different items outlined in purple. So a fleet card is something that you'll see in your chat. So for example, I'll be sharing it in Void Alliance right now, and it's called Fleet Training with Bacchus. By clicking on that link, you then are requesting to join the fleet. By requesting to join the fleet, a fleet commander then has notification on the top right of their fleet card saying that there's an application. They accept it and they put you into a squad. But in many cases, this is the main way that we are sharing fleets, is by making a fleet name, making a fleet card, and it is up to the player themselves to know which fleet they're joining, the name of the fleet themselves, and then also that they're aware of which commander that they're following. Because enemies do use this as a way to get people into fleets and fleet warp them, but that's another subject. But just as a layer of OPSEC, just make sure you know what fleet that you're joining. And that's why I try to say, I'll be calling the fleet this, or you know who's posting a specific name. Just be careful about that, because fleet warp commands that we'll be going over shortly are some things that you can't protect yourself against if you go into a red fleet accidentally or just by ignorance. So in order to share a fleet card and you're in the fleet, so if everybody can go ahead on the left side of their screen, they see 3 gray boxes. You see a gray box with a few shapes in it. You see a gray box that has command in it. And then you have a gray box that says fleet command in it. The gray box I'm talking about right now is the gray box that has the icons in it with the purple squares. That icons and all those icons signify your squad and who is in your squad. If you click on that gray box with the icons, you should see the fleet card. So the fleet card is that rectangular window that opens up on your screen. You say fleet, you'll see fleet commander, which is Bacchus, and then you'll see the squad 1. If you collapse squad 1, or by clicking on the squad 1 name, you can collapse it and you can see all the other squads. We have squad 1, squad 2. You now see squad 3, squad 4, squad 5. I can also edit the squad names to say Alpha Squad. So depending on the type of fleet commander or their specific training, you might see different names for squads, but in many cases, it sticks with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The way that you tell which squad that you're in is on the right side of the card, you'll see a ME, and then that's how you know which squad you're in. Otherwise, when all of the squads are collapsed like this, unless you're going to go through each one, it's tough to find even where you are. So this is the fleet card. You see the squad names, you see the fleet commander. The 2 big things that you see on the fleet card right now is you see fleet commander. So the person on top is the fleet commander, which is Bacchus, and then I do have a star next to my name. That star does signify that I'm the boss of the fleet. The boss of the fleet and the fleet commander of the fleet are 2 very different things. The boss of the fleet is the creator of the fleet and can handle some different administrative actions, such as accepting people into the fleet or moving people around the fleet. But the boss does not have any authority on commands. The fleet commander is the one that has absolute authority on commands. So in many cases, we actually like to split up the role between fleet commander and boss, just in case the fleet commander DCs or the boss DCs. There's still a way for people to be moved around the fleet. And by moving around the fleet, I mean going into different squads, renaming squads, making different squad commanders or squad deputies. So what you can see here, if I make Fishface a squad commander, he now has 2 chevrons next to his name. If I now make Hikano a squad deputy, he now has 1 chevron next to his name. And that really gets into the layers of hierarchy of commands, which I'll be going over shortly. You have your fleet commander with 3 chevrons, your squad commander with 2 chevrons, your squad deputy with 1 chevron, the fleet boss with a star, and then otherwise everybody else doesn't have anything next to their name. They're just regular fleet members. So as we navigate around the fleet card, and you can see when you uncollapse other squads, you don't see anything, but a fleet can have up to 51 members, 50 people, 10 in each squad. Each squad can have 1 squad commander and then up to 9 deputies. And then you have 1 fleet commander and then 1 boss. So it's 51 people total. The other aspect in the fleet card is this gear icon. This gear icon does show different things depending on your role within the fleet. But in many cases, when you're just part of the fleet, you'll see this share fleet, fleet journal, and leave fleet. If you're a fleet commander or fleet boss, you'll see the invite, application requirements, and edit fleet info. So then when you go into edit fleet info, this is what happens when you make a fleet. You can make your fleet name, your fleet advert. You only have 20 characters, so keep it short. Your bounty distribution and fleet accessibility. In many cases, you're not going to play with these different settings here, but you can reach out to me if you're wanting to be a little bit more specific regarding that. But otherwise, you can leave all this stuff to the default settings. Make your fleet name what you want it to be. If you have an advert, and you can, as you can see, when you click on it, you'll see the name and the advert itself. You can click confirm, and you have it right here. So that is how, so one more time, to open up the fleet card on the left-hand side, or you see this plus button. You see the fleet card, and you see all the information there. The other aspects that you see, so under that fleet card box, is you see the command button. So when you click on the command button, and let me make this go away. When you click on the command button, you see 4 different options for commands. The top one, located here, is one of the more used commands. Located here, looking like that. If you click on that, you'll be taken to the spot in space that the person who sent that command is currently occupying. That spot in space can be somewhere in the system. That spot in space could be somewhere outside the system, but it brings you to that specific spot. However, if I move from that spot, you still stay there. It is just to those specific set of coordinates for that here to command. Moving down the list, repair required. Repair required is a command that is mostly used by our logistics fleet or our healers in a different way. That will signify that you need repair. Whether it's repair for armor, repair for shield. In many cases, since we want to use shield, that's what we do. But that repair required actually will then give an easy command for a logistics team to follow, which then if they click on that, they will target you so that they can put the remote repairs on you. If somebody else in Logi clicks on that, it basically is just a targeting command, but it's just a different kind of command, so then it can be filtered to the logistics fleet. So if you're in an aggressive ship, do not click on that, because that means you're a target that ship, and then you may fire on it accidentally. The next one, same idea, capacitor required. That one is just either letting the fleet commander know that you're running out of a capacitor for having the micro warp drives on too long, or if we have logistics with either a capacitor boost, or if you have the remote capacitor transfer, then you can let people know if you need capacitor, just in case like your booster is taking too much of your capacitor, your micro warp drive. Because the last thing you want to do in the middle of a fight is to cap yourself out, and then you can't do anything and you're left sitting there, you can't move, and you most likely will die. The last command is called standby. Standby is the least frequently used one, but it basically just means stop. So standby will stop your ship while it's in motion. And I think I've seen it used to just make sure everybody stays in the bubble, but it's not really used that much. So then working your way, so with those four commands then populate a command history. So when I did a command, such as located here, you saw the command open up on the bottom of this fleet command history. However, if you miss that command, you can click on the clock right here, and it will bring up this command history. This command history is very helpful, especially for the go-tos or anything else. You will see the previous commands. You'll see what was issued by the people that you were receiving commands from, just in case either you missed it, you were lagging, or you just need to make sure to reissue it to yourself. This is what you'll be using for your command history. The one unfortunate aspect of this is that if you DC or log out of the game and log back in, this command history will be gone. This is just a locally saved version of the command history for your current game session. Another very, very popular command or very common command that you see is by going on the friendly tab, you see all of the friendly ships here. You will most likely see a approach fleet command to the anchor of the fleet. The anchor of the fleet is the person that we want the fleet all to anchor up on or to group on. So for example, I issued the anchor command to Hokanu. Everybody should be taking that command, and by taking that command, you are then going to be following Hokanu wherever he goes. So conversely, when I did a approach command, you have stayed in one spot. By following an aligned command, now wherever Hokanu moves, you will then follow him at the fastest speed you can. So now Hokanu is called the anchor. That's what we like to call. We anchor up because that means you're grouping up and that we're all going to the same spot. And now as Hokanu moves, we move with him. So then as we're anchored up and we say props on, a prop means propulsion. And propulsion is either a micro warp drive or a afterburner. So when we say props on, you'll see your propulsion device here. You'll be clicking on that, and it's the same thing. What your ship is trying to do is follow that command of approaching Hokanu at the fastest it can. So without the propulsion mod, it will be going as fast as it can. But if we want to stay in the bubble, and staying in the bubble is life, then we want to make sure to follow that approach command. So there are a few reasons why we like to use anchoring and approach commands. We anchor up on a guardian bubble, and a guardian bubble is somebody that has the shield field module on, which then will protect you from any incoming damage from the shield. And we can get a little bit more deeper into the shield field module itself. But the basic thing is, if you're inside the shield field module and somebody shoots from outside of it, all the damage will be redirected to the guardian that was issuing the shield field. So then, as you can see, it is very important that we're all anchored up, that we're all grouped up, whoever has the shield field, because that is what's protecting you from being killed or being alphaed off the field from long-range snipers or any other ship on the field. So then, the way that you fall out of the bubble is just in case if Hokanu starts moving and he doesn't tell us that he's propping. If you forget to pack our propulsion mod and he's going 1500, but then your slow boat speed is only 300, you will fall out of the bubble and die. The other way you die is by leaving your default approach distance on when you click on your ship. There's a way to then set approach distance. You want to make sure that set approach distance is now 0. And also that your set orbit is 0 as well. In many cases, if people are ratting, they have the orbit set to 20 or 30. These shield field modules are only 7.5 kilometers big. You want to make sure that everything is set to 0, and you don't want to accidentally warp out or move out of the shield field module, because that is a great way to die. Enemies will see you falling out of the bubble, they will focus you, and you will die. And then you will lose the ability to play during the CTA, because you will be potted, or you'll lose your ship, and then you won't be able to kill anything else. So just as a recap, what I covered over was fleet cards, fleet commands, and anchoring. Even if you just keep those 3 things in mind, just in your mind as you set up for CTAs, that will keep you alive probably more than 50% of everybody else. Just staying in the bubble, knowing what commands are followed and paying attention to the commands as they are given will keep you alive, will keep you with the fleet, and will keep you effective as we're either killing drones, we're moving towards the other fleet to alpha strike their logis. It's just keeping us all together, or basically just following the commands. And most of the commands are centered upon keeping as much effective force on the field, so then we can have a fighting force to attack the enemy with. So then we went over the term of anchoring. In many cases, when you're issued a approach fleet command, it doesn't really matter who it is to. The more important thing is that we are all following the same command. For example, I say, new anchor is Pablo. Pablo is the new anchor. We want to make sure that we're all on Pablo. And whether he has the bubble, whether he doesn't have the bubble, then it's up to him to then move or to help direct the fleet. And in many cases, we're just trying to make sure that there's less work on everybody else. Your main thing that you'll be focusing on is staying with your anchor, recycling who you're targeting, and killing them. And when it comes to propping or taking a look at your capacitor or how long to prop, the reason why we have our doctrine ships and the reason why we have our skills necessary for doctrine ships is to ensure that we can prop together, that we can prop for a long time, and that capacitor is not a worry. If you have a ship that cannot handle the needs for the propping, or if you forgot to train your micro warp drive skills, that's something that you need to take in consideration now, because the FC will not be able to slow the whole fleet down just to account for one person that doesn't have the correct skills or the correct modifications on their ship. So just make sure that everything is all set, either using a doctrine ship and that you also have doctrine skills, and you will be all good. So as we talk about fleet commands and following them, one other very important aspect, as we go back into the fleet command, you click on your history fleet command, click on the clock, you'll see all the command history, and then you'll see as I issued those follow to commands, it looks like an arrow going to a dot. If you either lose it or you move somewhere else, or you accidentally stop your ship, or you accidentally warp somewhere else, you can go to command history. You will then see the last command of following Pablo. You're either resend it or you follow it, and then you make sure to follow the correct person. Or I say, everybody switch to anchor Hokanu. That then is in your command history, and then either you'll see it in the fleet command, or you can actually find it in your history. I'll resend it, and we'll be changing our anchors. If you're not getting commands, or one thing that we'll do that when we set up a fleet, is you do fleet command history. On the bottom of history, you'll see the filter. On your filter, you see a whole bunch of different options. The main option that you'll see is accept commands from. So you have from an officer, from a colleague, from the squad, or from the fleet. We are still mostly using from the fleet. From the fleet means that anybody that has a deputy level or above, if they issue an approach command or a follow command, you will get that command. This also works for all commands such as targeting commands. So I don't really have a target, but a targeting command is a command that you'll see a focus fire command, and that focus fire command, I will click on it, but don't take it, but you'll just see what's happening. It actually logs me on, but everybody else will get that fleet command. But now I want to fleet unlock, and that will fleet unlock. So in many instances, the three most commands that you will see is an approach command. Over the voice comms, you'll hear a prop command, and then you will also see a fleet focus fire or a fleet unlock depending on the situation, which then you will see in your history. This is what a fleet unfocused fire looks like. So if I can please get somebody to issue a approach command on Bacchus. Can somebody go ahead and do that, please? Oh, and one thing I did forget to mention is make sure that when you do have accept commands it's set from the fleet. Everybody in the fleet should now be given deputy, and I can give deputy to everybody. So if I can get somebody to issue a fleet command follow to Bacchus. Perfect, I think you're following me. What I'm gonna say is props on. And then, so when the fleet commander says props on, go ahead and turn your props on by clicking on your propulsion mod. And And I'll say props on in 3, 2, 1, and that means go. Void flight fights at 1,800 kilometers. With my skills, I do go a little bit faster, so I just have to make sure to throttle myself. But we try to aim at 1,800 kilometers a second. That keeps us agile. That keeps us in range to stay on top of other battle cruisers or other battleships. As we definitely get into larger fleet fights or actually using larger ships, 1,800 is not something that's a feasible range for a battleship to take. And those are different roles that we'll be getting into in a little bit more advanced training. But if you're coming in a Rupture, if you're coming in a Thrasher, 1,800 is the way we fight, and 1,800 is the way that we tackle, and 1,800 is the way we kill. So make sure that you're following the follow command, that you're following the prop command, and it looks like Pablo. So this is a good instance. So we saw everybody as you approach Bacchus, you're staying in the bubble. Staying in the bubble is life. However, since Pablo, for any number of reasons, whether it was DC'd, whether he forgot his prop, whether he was capped out, he is out of the bubble. And we only can imagine if you're the enemy fleet, Pablo would be the person that would be primaried and he would be dead. And it's something that happens. We're all playing a mobile game. You DC, you click on something, it doesn't work. It happens to everybody. But just try to follow commands as best as you can. And we all understand that the game is still something that's under development and that's something to be worked on. But in this case, it is Pablo's issue because he forgot to bring a prop. So he won't be able to stay with the fleet. So whenever the fleet went to prop, he would be left behind no matter where they went. So that does bring us into the different roles. As I talked about, we have a guardian ship. A guardian ship that Void typically use is called the Rupture Guardian 2. We have some new guardian ships called Cyclone Guardians that we'll be using. They're slowly getting into circulation, but our main guardian ship at this point is called the Rupture Guardian 2. Rupture 2 Guardian. The other roles of the ships that we see is logistics ships. Most of our logistics ships are SCYTHE, S-C-Y-T-H-E. They're not called Scythe Logistics, they're just called SCYTHE. And they're the ones that help us keep our shields up, that help us stay alive. And they're either be in two places. They will either be in the bubble, or they'll be a little bit further outside of the bubble, so they're not in range of the enemy drones. And that gets into a little bit more advanced fleet commands or advanced roles as well. And then another role that we like to call is called tackle. A tackle role is somebody that can move very fast, such as a frigate or a thrasher. They run up, they then scram or web a target to then keep them locked down for the fleet to fly to, the fleet to then do a fleet lock on, and then the fleet to destroy. Those are the three main types of fleets. We have guardians, we have logi, and we have tackles. As more and more people get into higher tech levels, we start to have a little bit more advanced fleet roles, such as we have ships that are designed specifically for electronic warfare or EWAR, which then will drain the enemy's cap, or scram from a distance, or do a few other things to then prevent them from being the most effective, and will help our fleet for victory. But those are different ships that are coming in. You'll see in the doctrine, we'll be doing more specific training for those ships. But today, most of our fleets compose of Ruptures, Rupture 2 Guardians, Rupture Guardians, or Thrashers. And that ship composition and the way that we fly has been proven again and again to be very effective, very affordable for the Federation, and something that has struck fear into the enemy's hearts, as they don't realize how fast we are, how tanky we are, and how much damage we do with our autocannons. A lot of people say, why do we use autocannons when they only have a range of 15? But a range of 15 is more than enough when we fight at 0. And that's why we need to stay tanky, that's why we need to stay together, and that's why we need to stay fast. So then our guardians protect us from snipers, our speed will then get us to be able to run to snipers, and then our damage allows us to kill the snipers before their support fleet can come up. So as we talked about fleet maneuvers, so I'm just slow boating now. The other kinds of fleet maneuvers that we'll see is a fleet commander. The person on the top of the fleet card is the one and only person that can warp the entire fleet, all 5 squads or up to 50 other people, all at the same time. If a squad commander or squad deputy then issues a fleet warp, they only warp their squad. Or for example, if I say we need to warp to MOCW gate, I then will do a warp fleet. That warp fleet, we're forcibly warp everybody within the fleet to that gate as fast as they can. So you can see the destroyers go first since they're a smaller ship and more agile. The cruisers will follow, then the battle cruisers follow, then battleships. All depending on skills, but that's how it typically follows. And what happens when you fleet warped is everybody warps in a little sphere of about a 5-kilometer sphere together. But the first thing that we want to do when a fleet warps is you want to make sure to re-anchor on your Guardian. So can I please get somebody to issue a re-anchor command on Bacchus? I want to make sure that we all stay grouped up and that we all warped to the MOCW gate. We're either ready for a fight or ready to form up, but I would like to see everybody approaching Bacchus. Good job, good job. That does bring me to another point. There is 2 very specific wordings to use and things that is one of the many things that will kill a fleet. There's a big difference between a fleet warp and a fleet jump. A fleet warp, especially on a gate, will take you to the gate. A fleet jump will then jump you through the gate. 2 very different types of navigation commands that you have to make sure that either you fleet commander, either they tell you to warp fleet, or if you jump fleet, you're expecting 2 very different things. You either will land at the gate at 0, or you either will go through the gate at 0 and find out what's on the other side. But nice job on the form up. In many cases, we like to warp fleet at 0. We like to form up, and then we'll jump together. But that is good practice on whenever you land together. You want to make sure that you form up on your Guardian and that you stay grouped up together. So then I'll do it one more time. We're gonna warp to the sun. Another kind of command that you'll see is a warp fleet, and then when you click and drag, you can see that you can either warp fleet or you warp yourself at different distances. So you can set yourself from 0 to 100. In any cases, 0 or 100, but it all depends on the scout. But then once again, as you land, you can either see your fleet command history, or you can find Bacchus using the friendly tab. You'll see him on your list. I don't see myself. If there's a whole bunch of people on your list, you'll actually see your filter on the right-hand side. This is a cruiser symbol. This is a destroyer symbol. This is a frigate symbol. Many cases, our Guardians are cruisers, so you'll be clicking on that. I only can see other people, so I'll only see Hokanu, but everybody else should be seeing Bacchus, which then you can click on. You can either do the approach command here, or you can do the fleet approach that way. So everybody should be approaching Hokanu now. So this as a recap, I know I went through a lot of this stuff very fast, but we went over fleets, we went over how to form fleets, we went over the different types of fleets, we went over the commands of fleets, how to find the history of the commands, how to then change the filters of your command, and then the command types. You have your navigation commands, which are the moving commands, such as the here to, or the follow, or the align to. Your attack commands, such as focus fire or fleet unlock, and your repair commands, such as capacitor required or repairs required. So this falls into different roles of logi, PvP, and then everybody. And then you have your different tabs here. In many cases, you'll just be on your PvP tab, which then shows the sun as well as all the enemies. If you need to find a friendly person, you click on the friendly tab. You find them here, and you can filter by ship types. We talked about forming up. We talked about the difference between slow boating, which means flying without a propulsion mod. We talked about saying what to do when a fleet commander says props on. And this is actually a good lesson. The fleet commander then forgot that all of the fleet is now approaching Hokanu. So the fleet commander now needs to say, hey, new anchor is Bacchus. We need to make sure that everybody is approaching Bacchus. Can I please get an approach command to Bacchus? That's the one thing the bubble cannot do, is issue an approach command on himself. Because then, as he puts a shield field up, he is now protecting everybody within the shield field. When they stay alive, they're able to tackle the enemy fleet, they're able to destroy the enemy fleet. And in many cases, we stay here, we're either killing drones as they come within our bubble, we're either running and tackling somebody and killing them, or we're warping on top of people if they're staying at 0. And that's the main way that our fleet fights, how our fleet moves, and it sometimes gets very situational, especially we see more and more different ships on the field, or as we see more and more large fleet fights. Things do change, but if you just remember those basics that we learned today of how to stay with the fleet, how to make sure your commands are synced properly, how to do propulsion mod correctly, and just knowing the difference between a warp and a jump, and just paying attention to what's going on the screen and listening to the fleet commander, that is the best way that you can help the Federation. That's the best way that you can help yourself stay alive, and that's the best way that you're going to help yourself get kill marks on your ship. Last thing what I'll be doing is I'm going to be warping fleet to DBS. And at this point, I would like to open up the floor for any questions or comments or anything else that I can cover before I start to close up this training.
Brill, thanks for that, Bacchus. That was really good. One query I had is around the prop commands. I noticed the first time you ran it, you did a countdown and said 3, 2, 1 prop. Is it a single cycle, or do you just leave it on until you're told otherwise?
So, great question. I appreciate you asking that. In cases, a fleet commander, they either will specify 1 or 2 props. If they don't specify, go ahead and leave it on until you reach the Guardian, and then you either hear the FC say props off, or you just be leaving them on because you want everybody to stay quick or to stay agile. But that is specification that some FCs do say prop mods 1 cycle, prop mods 2 cycle. As we get further and further along, there's starting to be such a gap in player skills. I have a fairly high skill in my micro warp type, so my micro warp type cycle actually lasts 2 or 3 seconds longer than somebody who might not have as many high skills. That's something the main thing is you need to stay with the Guardian. You need to pay attention to your own capacity usage and regulate yourself. But in many cases, we're not really keeping props on, but it's just making sure that you're in the bubble. So do I have any other questions regarding the types of ships we use, how we fight, how we form up, the role of really the void fleets in the previous CTAs or in upcoming CTAs, where we're going with fleet distribution? I don't want to open up the box too much, but I want to make sure that your questions are heard and addressed as we continue to work together to grow our own knowledge, to work together to grow ourselves as part of playing this game, and to be better within the Void Federation itself to stay alive.
Yeah, sorry. I dropped from the call for a second. What is the often when I've joined, I'll move out of the bubble. What am I doing wrong? And what do I need to correct that? Is it just that I've not accepted the follow command? Sometimes I'm not seeing the commands as well in your CTAs.
Yeah, so that can be the top 3 things on the list is making sure that your fleet command history is from the fleet. Because in many cases, the main Guardian is the fleet commander or somebody that cannot issue it on themselves. It'll have to be either from a squad deputy or squad commander. If you're in a different squad, you will not receive the command from a squad deputy or squad commander from another squad. But if you have this command filter turned on, you will receive that, and then you'll see it in your history. The other things you have to take into consideration, especially if you're ratting or just coming back from PvE, is that you have your set approach set to 0, and that you also have your set orbit set to 0, and that means 0 stays 0 on the target that you're aligning to.
Okay. I think that might have been the latter. I know I've been doing some PvE with a gentleman, and he noticed that my set was too high. We fixed that, and that helped me stay in the bubble when we've been doing some PvE. So,
heading to command, take a line here too is even with those 2 set to 0, make sure that your auto orbit target is turned off as well.
That actually was this one too. So, and I think that might have been some of the larger problems I was having. And I think you might have went over it, but I just wanted to stress. I often those commands I found to try to find the anchor because there were so many. So can you go over that?
Of course. So the best way to find the anchor is you go to your friendly tab, and then in many cases the anchor will be a cruiser. So it's that little house symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So you click on it. I can't see myself, but we can imagine for a second that Hokano is the anchor. You'll see him there. Or if the anchor is for some reason a destroyer, you click on the destroyer filter. Or if he's a frigate, you'll be clicking on the frigate filter. But as we get into a 50-person fleet, then of course there's a lot more ships. So that's why we try to specify which corp the person is in. So for example, if our anchor is Hokano, I would say NILF Hokano is anchor. And then you can, if you sort by names, you can then sort by and find the ends, which then you'll see Hokano, you'll probably see Rupture Guardian, and you'll anchor on him.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions about using the Rupture fleet, the Rupture Guardians, Rupture Doctrines, or any other doctrines for Void, whether it's for ratting, whether it's for PvP? Any other questions regarding those guys?
Well, I guess I had another question then about when we're told to turn our prop mods on, will there be a command eventually to turn them off so that we don't lose too much cap, or is that just a judgment call when you're trying to follow it faster?
Correct. So it is a judgment call up to the person who's calling the prop mods to say start and stop. Unfortunately, there really isn't a command, and we haven't really practiced. We talked about using the capacity required command, but it would just be too confusing. You just have to listen to whether the FC says turn props on or turn it off, which we finish the whole cycle. But then you just have to pay attention to yourself.
So obviously, if you're in that situation, our voice comms are reasonably strict when we're in a call to arms or anything like that. Would it be best just to ask in the fleet, say, should props still be on, rather than on voice?
Yeah, you can type it in. In many cases, the squad deputies or other people will then interrupt the FC and say, hey, do you still want props on? Or props on as a question mark. It would not, for me personally as FC, if somebody said, hey, props still on, we still want them on, I would say, oh, no, thank you, turn them off. That's not something that interrupts me. It's actually just it's good camp management, because I want to make sure as an FC that the fleet can move. And if I'm leaving props on for no reason and we're just burning cap, it's a waste of energy.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but the main role of Void is we stay together, we stay in our Guardian. We have recently adopted what we call the Death Ball Guardian, where a whole bunch of Rupture Guardians put together. They all have shield fields on, which means that as they move around, or as they drop off or move to the back or the front of the group, then damage is spread. They're fairly agile. They're very tanky. They're great for tackling. And then when they drop the shield fields, then they provide great targets of opportunity for sniper fleets. On the past CTAs, Void has been very successful at tackling enemy fleets, scramming them, then turning off the shield field generators, then letting the tornadoes or any other long-range ships snipe them down, and then that's how we wipe enemy fleets off with a fairly inexpensive fleet ourselves. All right, but if there's no other questions, I want to say thank you again, everybody, for joining me. I know I went over a lot of information. 50 minutes goes by fast, but over the 10 different topics here that I talked about in our fleet card. Joining fleets, how to navigate fleets, anchoring, what is propping, warping, forming, and then anchoring, using fleet commands, what are the different roles, such as guardian, DPS, logi, and tackle, how to handle multiple anchors, focus fire commands, and then maneuvering as a fleet. But if you keep what we learned today in mind, you'll already be so much better at staying alive, being able to be the most effective for your FC, and killing whoever enemies are, and just enjoying the game more instead of just seeing it from a pod. But I wanted to say thanks again for everybody for taking the time, and please feel free to DM me or let me know of any questions or any feedback regarding this training. I'm always looking to expand or to update my own training methods myself. But I just appreciate you taking the time today to join me. So thank you.
Cheers, Bacchus.
Yep, thank you.